Good evening and welcome to the 21st season of Northwest City Politics. I'm your guest host, Eric Margolis. Today we're going to be visiting the small town of Osseo, Minnesota, and we have a very special guest in studio. Not only does this gentleman serve as its police chief, but he also serves as the city administrator. Please join me in welcoming to our studio, Chief Mikkelson.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. So 2 jobs, police chief and city administrator.
Yep.
That's a very fascinating combination. Now you got started though in Osseo in the police department, correct?
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience doing that?
Sure. So I started in 2004 as a patrol officer. I worked in that capacity for a little over 10 years with the city of Osseo. I did start in police work, though, in 1996. That was my first full-time police officer job in Wisconsin. So that's where I started my career. So I had, almost, what would that be, 18 years of police work. Then I became the police chief in 2015. Right between when I started in 2004, we had a house. That was our first police department. Then in 2015, actually, when I took over, we moved into our current facility, which is attached to City Hall. And so that was a huge change for our department. At that time, we had 4 patrol officers and a police chief. And so things have changed in the last 10 or 11 years, which we can get into later, but that has really grown our department.
Yeah, just that alone, the fact that you were there during that time of development for Osseo and its police department, growing very much from operating out of a home. I think you were telling me off camera that it was located off of County Road 80.
So we had our first police department was County Road 81 and Jefferson Highway. Then we moved, which is actually in the parking lot of the current police department, and that's where our house was. And then now we've moved into our current facility, which is attached to City Hall.
Wow, so you've gotten to see not only the police department grow, but Osseo itself grow from what it used to be like 2 decades ago to what we see today.
Absolutely, and I think it's not only just growing, it's just the times have changed so much within public safety in general, especially after, the George Floyd riots and, some of the crisis we've run into with staffing and trying to overcome that as a small town. We really had to dig deep and figure out how do we keep our police department fully staffed? How do we make sure that we have enough officers for the community to feel safe and keeping it a safe place to work and play?
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been a lot of changes, societal changes that we've experienced in Minnesota, and especially around policing.
Yes.
What are some of the significant changes or any impacts that you would say have happened in your police department, say, in the last couple of years?
So after we call it like post-George Floyd, really, is where a lot of law enforcement officers talk about, or even leaders in law enforcement, they talk about the changes that have happened in our society and also just within the police work itself, how it's changed. And so post-George Floyd, we turned over from 2020 till 2023, we totally turned over the whole police department twice.
Wow.
And so at one point I was sleeping in my office just so that we had people there to
patrol
or at least be available for calls for service. And we had looked at maybe possibly contracting with an outside agency to come in and help, but we were able to get by. And then some of the recommendations that were made to our council was to expand our police department so we do have more officers, because we had lost so many. And I would sit down with them during their walkout interviews, and we talked about why are you leaving, and what are some of the issues. And so some of those major issues that came up were 3 of them. 1 was pay. 2 was the fact they didn't want to work alone, because we had 1 officer per shift in the city of Osseo in a major metropolitan area, which is an oddity with a town our size, only being 2,900 people, 1.2, depends who you talk to,
Sure.
1.2 square miles or so of city. That's very uncommon. Typically, you see that outstate, not in a major metropolitan area. So you're dealing with the same crime rate that everyone else is, maybe on a smaller scale because you don't have as many people, but we still have the crime rate, so we have to staff for it. And, we started to see our crime rate and calls for service going up. We also saw that we wanted to retain the officers that you have, and it's kind of like any other job, really, where if you lose that experience, you're replacing it with no experience. And that's very difficult as a manager, as a leader, and even you're now dealing with a lot of, how shall we say, liability in policing right now. Obviously, if you don't have the training and you're young and you don't really have the experience to lean on, because it's left. I mean, we've lost a lot of officers. This isn't just new to Osseo.
Right.
It's all across policing in Minnesota and really nationwide. And so we had to do some changes with adding officers so that we're not working alone. We wanted to add some more supervision just to give us some better handle on some of the liability, because so we added a lieutenant. So right now there's a chief, a lieutenant. We have 9 in patrol currently, so we're fully staffed, but we're hiring 2 more this year. And so we're going to have a detective and then 10 in patrol.
Wow.
So before we had 4 police officers, a chief, and like 10 or 12 part-time police officers. So they were full-time licensed, but typically working either another job in policing or they just had another job.
So they were different than reserve officers.
Yes. They were full-time police officers, badge, gun, all the bells and whistles that police officers come with. And in the state of Minnesota, you have to take training, so we would provide that training for them. But a lot of them were retired officers who would come back. We'd pay them an hourly rate, and they'd come back and fill shifts, because with 4 people and a chief, it's hard to fill shifts. You want days off, want to make sure that we're covered. So we really had to dig deep and have some probably difficult conversations about what does that look like for Osseo and how does that work. We've had positive feedback. Our community is very safe. It's actually a very desirable, if you look at the turnaround time on sales and people wanting to come to the city of Osseo, and they love our little downtown, and we have a lot of neat stores, and it's really a great community. And I've always said that this community supports its city staff and its police department and fire department and public works department like no other, and it's really enjoyable place to work.
Yeah, and that's really a fascinating story, all the time and dedication and service that you've put into not just being part of the Osseo Police Department, but building it.
Absolutely.
That in itself is just this big body of work, right? The complete turning over of the police department in the recent years, growing, even though in the post-George era, as you refer to it, from the smaller, 4 patrolmen and part-time police officers to now, you've almost tripled in size.
Yes.
And turned over pretty much every position during that same time period. I mean, that probably takes a lot just to do that one job. So what inspired you to take another job in the city?
Well, it came out of a circumstance from the city. Our old administrator in the city departed ways. And so I took over. I was probably the longest, well, I am still the longest standing employee currently of the city, just with the many years I've been there. And they came to me, the council came to me and said, could you do this for interim? Well, as I took over for interim, I did that from the end of April all the way through the summer, and I started to see that if I could not only save the city a little bit of money because they're not giving me 2 paychecks, but I could do both roles if I already had a very good lieutenant. He's eager, he's really good at what he does to assist me in the police department. And he stepped right up, Lieutenant Todd Kinsey stepped right up, took over, has been doing a lot of things things I can't get to, and has really stepped into a leadership role within the department. And then we had some staff turnover at City Hall. So we've worked through that now. That took some months to get new people in to new positions, and one of the new positions is an assistant city administrator. Alicia Vickerman used to be a council member. Now she took over as our assistant city administrator, and she's been great. She's stepped right into that role and started helping just moving us forward and really looking at some things that had been kind of left undone before. So she's been great as an assistant and helping me on the city side. So I guess that's how I call it, city side, police department side. But really helping me being able to deal with the city staff up at City Hall, being able to be a leader, being able to really make good connections. And it's been a great hire, I think, for our city to have her there.
It's amazing to have a great, staff and people. And, it's just fascinating that throughout the 2 decades of, that going back, looking at Osseo's history, that, you are the senior member of the city, operations. You, like you said, you've been there the longest.
Yes.
So it's really fascinating to see you transition into this hybrid role. So how do you manage that, right? Police work is very demanding, and running a city is also very demanding.
Well, like I said, I have a great staff, and there's no way that I could do what I'm doing without having a phenomenal staff. We have a great leadership within each department, a very supportive council. I mean, if it was adversarial, it'd be very difficult for me to do anything, to do both roles, because there are some things that aren't going to be the same when I'm not working full-time at either job.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So according to contract and things that I've worked out with the city, is I work 55% police chief, 45% city administrator. And so there are things that aren't the same as if you had 2 independent people into those roles. But I will tell you that I knew I had the staff. I knew I had good people, great people in places that they need to be. And I think with the leadership of the council and being able to, because they're very hands-on with hiring and doing interviews and things like that, I felt very comfortable that we had the right people. And if I didn't have that, there's no way. It is a lot to take on and to do. And so, like I said, I once that staff was in place, I was able to watch what they were able to do. I was then felt comfortable coming forward with a full-time contract and saying, yeah, I can make this work. One of the biggest things is, for me, is the challenge of doing that has always been a part of my soul, is to have a challenge at work. I never sat still much in my working career. And so that's very interesting, okay, the challenge.
Yeah.
Number 2, I love this town. I always have. I grew up near here in Anoka, knew about Osseo. I've always loved the town, and to make an impact at that level in with working with leaders, our council members, our citizens, I mean, there's nothing better than that, to be able to bring things forward, to be able to make, some serious decision-making and policy changes that, in my view, right, in working with everyone, are going to make long-lasting impact. And I think that's just something that's very interesting, and it really kind of grabbed my attention.
It is very unique.
It is.
No doubt. And it's a wonderful opportunity, and you definitely have the right disposition to do it. So God bless you for that, because I can only imagine that despite your division of 55 as police chief and 45% as city administrator, there probably really is never a time where you put either one of those roles completely down.
Well, that's something that I knew taking this on, right? If I didn't want to be with a phone 24/7, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Right.
But I was already kind of there, because for a long time I was the only administrator in the police department as a chief, and the only one. So I did receive all the phone calls. I did get called in at night. Oh yeah.
So you're really doing the work?
Yeah. I was coming in and I was working. I still, up until probably the last year, I was working shift work, In fact, we were just talking today, and the police department's kind of funny, is that we had a shift open, and I was like, oh, I think I could work that.
Pick that up.
And it was an overnight shift, and I'm like, I don't really want to work an overnight shift, but I would, and I still wear my uniform. I still drive a squad car. I still make traffic stops. I've made arrests here recently. Is it difficult to do all of that? Yeah, but it's challenging and it's fun. For me, I enjoy it. I enjoy being part of the community. I really enjoy being able to be a part of all the outreach that goes on within our city, you know, all the city events and being a part of that. So it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, that's really one of the probably the best perks of the roles that you have, is being that face of the community in your outreach and policing work, but also probably talking to residents and constituents about, you know, city works and, you know, parks and many other things. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the city administrator role. So earlier you were saying that as the department was growing, you know, there was asks that were made from your role and as part of the police department to the city. And so now, who makes those asks on behalf of the police department?
Well, I do, but the way that our city structure is we can't make very many large decisions. I mean, none, actually. I have a spending limit of about $2,000.
Wow.
Otherwise, I have to ask the city council.
Sure.
So ultimately, I'm still asking the same people. And it is very interesting when I talk at some city council meetings and I'm like, take off my administrator hat and put my police hat on, you know.
Yeah.
And that's true. And the lieutenant, Kinsey, will come in and speak for the police department at times, depending on the issue or what may be going on. And so, you know, I think there was a misnomer at some point that I would have all this power and I could run budgets and do whatever, and that's not true. I still have to go through and get approval for all of these things through the council, and they have to vote on it. And that's how our structure is. I mean, ultimately, those 4 council members and the mayor make the decisions ultimately on where we're going. Now, am I bringing ideas? Absolutely. But I also think one of the neat things with our city is that our council members are very willing to give of their time, and they come in on committees. And so the first thing you don't see is the background work that went into talking about maybe adding a police officer or adding a public works worker or, you know, adding a fire chief, which we just did in the last year, a full-time fire chief. And so in the background, I've gone through and talked to maybe a budget committee and then maybe a HR committee, which are made up of council members, and then we brought it to the public at a council meeting. So, you know, I'm getting guidance all the time, and at any point, if they say it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, and that's fine.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and it seems like you have really grown into the role and are navigating it very well. You know, again, that is a tremendous amount of work, and it's really great. And the people of Osseo are very fortunate, you know, to have you in that position. And some very interesting dynamics, though, because so you wear a couple more hats, right? Some within the city and some outside of the city.
Yes.
And you know, can you tell us a little bit about your life outside of the city roles?
Well, I'm married and I have 4 kids. So I have a 19, almost 18, almost 17-year-old. So they're, and then I have a 14-year-old. He's almost 15. So our children are 53 months apart from oldest to youngest. I have one currently in the National Guard, so she's in the Army National Guard. And I have a senior, a junior, and then he's a 9th grader. So my son is a 9th grader. So I'm very active. I just got back yesterday. Yeah, yesterday from Milwaukee for volleyball, you know, stuff. So I have a life. You ask my wife, I'm not at home as much as I used to be, but she's very supportive. My family's very supportive. I think they understand what I do and why I do it. And we had a lot of conversations kind of when this all came up, you know, and I proposed this to the city and proposed it to the council and said, what do you think? Again, it was a proposal, and they could have said no. This isn't something I powered through to do. I was able to have conversations, and we weighed all those same questions you have. Like, how do you deal with 2 roles and 2 jobs? And one of the requirements is I got to have good people, right? So
Yeah,
I have the
100%.
good people. There are some really great employees within the city of Osseo. So, and that's very helpful for me when I'm at home, or if I do take a trip. Yeah, my phone's on, but usually it's through a couple people before it gets to me sometimes now. So it's not just direct. But my family understands, you know. My phone does ring, and sometimes in the middle of the night, and, you know, I'll hear it in the morning, but we definitely have, I try to really have a good balance. It's hard, but you really try. And then I'm also currently with the, you probably have heard me mention, I'm the president of our church. So that's down in Cottage Grove. So that's another role that I fill.
Sure.
Which I've been doing that, I think, for about 4 years. But that's not as intense, you know. We have a really good church, and I love it there, and you know, that's some part of our family values. So
Excellent. No, that's wonderful. So family, faith, and service, all 3. Wow, I wonder what you'll do next.
Retire.
Retire. I don't see that. I don't see that for you.
Oh,
I don't see that for you.
I've 5, well, a little less than that, 4.5 years. So I just turned 50 in December, and I'll go till I'm 55, and then I'm retiring. So
From law enforcement?
from everything. From
Everything.
work. Yep.
You heard it here first, folks.
I mean, I may do something else
Yeah.
at some point, but I'm retiring from Osseo. That's the plan. Again, plans can go differently.
Sure.
But that is the plan. I have a plan to move up north. I've got some acreage, and
Oh, nice.
yeah. So my
Very
wife will,
nice.
my wife and I will move up. Our kids will be gone, hopefully by then, and off to college or wherever they decide to go in their lives. And it's time.
Well, that's an amazing plan, and I wish you nothing but
Thank
the
you.
best in that. But while you're still here,
Yes.
over the next 4 or 5 years, what are some of the key things that you would like to accomplish before you retire?
Well, I think just in this role, I'll have some impact on some long-lasting decision-making and policy change within the city. And one of the big things I think for our city especially that is going to be a big positive is this municipal cannabis. Now, can you imagine a police chief saying
Right.
this is a great thing?
Okay, yeah. Now, this is where your experience as law enforcement officer and a city administrator kind of the perfect storm for this. I'm very curious about this because it's the only city in the state of Minnesota that I'm aware of that has opted to do a municipal dispensary, right?
Yes and no. So there are other cities looking at it.
Okay.
There are many actually that are, you know, dabbling and thinking about it. And right now it's starting to heat up with some of the licensing things. And our city has been involved in this for some time, looking at a municipal dispensary. And really, when you look at it as far as income, it could be really, really good for the city, especially a city our size. You know, everything's a projection, so we have no idea where it's going to be. We've moved down the road towards having someone kind of managing and taking care of the dispensary for the city, and we would get a payment back through a group. But I think that's a lasting, long-lasting positive impact, especially when budgets are tough, taxes are hard. I just went through my first budget this last year, which was very interesting, where I ran the whole budget. I've done some budgeting, but the breadth and scope of what a city administrator does when it comes to that was something I wasn't prepared for until I got into it. And I think we did a pretty good job getting our budget where it needs to be. But again, you're never going to make everyone happy, and you're going to hear, obviously, about taxes. And I totally understand where everyone is coming from, and we listened. You know, again, I don't make these decisions in a vacuum. So, you know, this is a group effort from a lot of different areas within the city.
And you're looking at the operational needs and funding for all of the departments in the city, including law enforcement. But then it's really up to the city council to weigh and decide where they're going to balance the books.
Absolutely.
To come up with that whatever that property tax increase ends up being. And you guys just are going to have to do that all over again, though, in July, right?
Absolutely. That's when the budget season starts right up again. So there's a lot of work and a lot of behind the scenes. Again, something I wasn't a part of before. And so now that I've been a part of it, there's a lot of work that goes into budgeting and getting those numbers where you need them. And there's a lot of people, the council sees it about 5 to 6 times during that budget process. And then we have meetings in our committee level, all throughout, usually monthly or even twice a month throughout the season, just to look at it. And we're giving presentations to the committees, and here's where we're at. What do you think? Where should we move things? And then we bring it to the council, and then we get more feedback. And it's a long process. It goes from July until we approve the final budget at the last council meeting, which was mid-December this year. So
lengthy budgeting process, and of course for the residents of Osseo and the viewers at home, there's a public portion of that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Where they can come in and they can talk about their priorities and either support or sometimes oppose certain initiatives, right? So I want to go back to this municipal dispensary because I'm very curious. In the discussions about whether the management of it would be outsourced, were there discussions of that it would be actually run by city staff?
There was some initial discussions, and we looked at what that would look like, and it would be creating a whole nother department within the city. And so then it's, okay, how do we manage that with the current staffing, and where would we have to add people? Now, would it pay for itself? I'm sure it would in the end. But also, there's going to be a lot of regulation. I mean, this is not a product that they're just going to throw out onto the street without making sure that it's a pure product and that the products are packaged correctly, and whoever is selling them is doing it the right way. So there's a lot of liability in that if you are to lose a license or get caught, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's the same as, if you're a bar owner. I mean, you have to follow some certain rules.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And so those are the things that we just looked at and then started to get companies coming to us and saying, well, we want to give a presentation and here's what we can do for you. And I think the council heard a couple, 3-4 presentations. They've signed a letter of intent with one company right now.
Okay.
And that's not a commitment, but that's just saying, yeah, we're interested.
Yeah.
A lot of that information is public. You can look back at different meetings. So it's in process. The biggest process right now is getting a license, because at the state level things are a little unclear as far as where everything's going to finally fall.
Yes.
So it's hard to say what it's going to look like, but I do, from all the projections and everyone I've talked to, I think this is going to be a new way for the city to have income, to kind of supplement some of the budgeting issues that we have, and then that'll help with our taxes, and it's going to help bring money to the city, and I know and I have faith that our police department will do what it needs to do if there's any issues. And what we're seeing in other states is not the criminal portion in the city where it's at.
Right.
What we're seeing is, more driving and public health issues.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's been quite interesting, the journey of Minnesota and its forte into recreational cannabis.
Absolutely.
And Osseo, really put an interesting twist to the entire thing. So I think there are a lot of people who are curious to see, when your grand opening is going to be and what kind of door prizes you're going to be giving away at your municipal dispensary.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But, only time will tell. And of course, going back to the whole budgeting process, I think in the last legislative cycle, right, did you participate in any of, I think there were some bonding requests?
There were some bonding requests. I didn't directly participate in any of the decision-making when it came to that bonding request.
Okay. And then now, in your role as a city administrator, do you work with the League of Minnesota Cities to advocate for different policies? Do you work with legislators in your area?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there was a I think it was a $1.6 million bonding. Well, first it was authorized, then we didn't get that money. So then last year we had a bonding request. It was the same amount, 1.6 million. Well, then the state couldn't come to a compromise.
Right.
So they were unable to do a bonding bill.
Right.
We were in it, but
Right.
they right up to the last minute, they couldn't get that done. So this year, we've got another bonding request into our local senator and House representative. So we've got it, they're there now.
Okay.
But obviously, right now, they're not working really well together. So that's up in the air.
Right.
And so it's going to be there, and that's one of the things that we've been instructed from the council is they wanted to see more structured every year, using connecting with the state and trying to get things for Osseo, because for a long time we never really asked for much. We've been able to kind of self-sustain all of that, and so now I think there's just a real big push within our council to get a little more structured in the way that we ask and the things that we ask for.
Yeah, that's going to be very fascinating. I remember, I'm not originally from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I moved here in 2001, and I remember a field trip with my daughter. We went to the Minnesota History Center.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know this about Minnesota, but it actually makes a lot of sense given everything that's happening and everything that has happened in our state. But every state has a constitution, and Minnesota has two of them. One signed by one party and one signed by the other party. There is not one constitution. They are identical in every form, in every article, in every way, but there are two separate pieces of paper on the wall at the History Center. And it's just, I think, how Minnesota has always operated.
Yep.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I think that different opinions are great, and people need to find ways to work together, and certainly cross, the aisles and boundaries. And I'm hopeful that they'll figure that out as we move forward.
And so are we. I mean, as cities, just in general, I think we all would love for the state to start working and get back together and make some things happen.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, it's much needed.
Absolutely.
As we head into the future. Okay, so there's two more hats that you wear for the city that we haven't talked about yet, because I think it's important for the viewers at home to know them. One is you're also the Emergency Management Director for the city of Osseo, and that's a very important job.
Absolutely it is.
Now, in recent history, right, I think there's been time, if we go back, say, the last 4 or 5 years, had you had to activate that emergency plan?
So directly in the city, no, we have not. But did we, during some of the riots and the COVID, did we use parts of that plan? Absolutely. And we learned a lot of great information. One thing we did learn is that our citizens and our council are steadfast for the city. They want to be protective and want to make sure that, like I said, that we're still standing, and that they're very pro keeping everyone safe and making sure that everyone is okay. And I think that is something, certain places, there's not a lot of, one of the best, how I want to say this is that one of the best things, not a lot of red tape in Osseo.
Right.
There's just not. I mean, it's a phone call away. The chief is a phone call away. The city administrator is a phone call away. The mayor is a phone call away.
Same phone call sometimes.
Yep. Now it's the same phone call. But the mayor was very active. The council was very active, and all of our COVID response. I mean, there's not a lot of people you have to go through to make these things happen. So we were able to navigate that, even though we weren't directly affected. Everyone around us was.
Right.
We did have, as far as law enforcement, people at Brooklyn Center for when they had the officer-involved shooting there.
Right, the unrest.
Yep, the unrest there. So we had an officer, part of what's called a mobile field force, and he was a part of that. I mean, I'd see him come in, and he just looked, he'd worked, we'd all worked. you know,
Yes.
a lot of days in a row during all of that. So we have activated parts of it, but haven't had to yet, in the last few years anyway, put together our full plan and have that in action. So I wish I had some wood to hit, but-
Exactly. But
yeah.
but it's good that parts of it were activated, right? Because like you said, there were learnings from there
Absolutely.
and some takeaways and maybe identified some additional needs and resources. And here's another example, right, where as a city that you're small, you have to work with your neighbors and even depend on a state agency, right, for a lot of the emergency management support.
Absolutely. Yep. And we have those inroads in the as far as city to city. And really that's one thing I will say about the state of Minnesota as a whole. We're there for each other. I mean, law enforcement for a long time, that's the only way we can make it work is to work together. So there's a lot of back and forth support depending on types of calls and what's going on, because not everybody has 500 cops sitting in their department and that are on duty. So,
That's a lot of police officers.
Yep. And so there's a lot of steps and a lot of work that has been done behind the scenes to make sure that we have the right agreements and to make sure that we have that everyone is really on board with helping each other. I mean, everything from police, fire, to public works, to just, you know, you can make a phone call and you might have a fence around your city hall if you need it, or,
Sure.
you know, you could make a call and you might have 40, 50 cops in your city if you need it. And, you know, there's been examples of that all over the place. And so I do think that as cities go, we all know we can't handle everything on our own. There's not one city anywhere, even county, that can handle everything all of the time. So,
Yeah.
and so that's where emergency management has been awesome in kind of setting up ways for us to work together and to be together. So,
There's a whole like science to it, right? You have
Yep.
equipment and a command centers and you know chain of command and
yep, it's very structured.
yeah, How often is the plan updated?
Usually you try to do that every 3 to 5 years. We actually have a group of cities that get together to make our plan, and we work together monthly. We have meetings and we sit and talk about the plan. And then a new plan gets updated, and then we get that new plan.
In place.
And each individual city has sort of their own, but as you need more and more resources, we get into the bigger plan.
Does the city have any joint powers agreements with any neighboring cities, or like, do you serve? Do they patrol? Do you expand?
So there's joint powers for policing that's county-wide, statewide almost.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
that's something that's been in place for quite some time. Fire, same thing. For a long time, fire services have had agreements to come and help. No matter, you have a major incident, people are coming to help you.
Sure, understood.
And that's what's really, really nice. Now, when you start getting into public works, that's newer as far as what equipment do you have, you know, trying to figure out if, you know, you have a certain jetter over here that Osseo has, but Maple Grove has, you know, a certain plow that we might need that we can get together and switch off. Now, that would be more in an emergency situation. So like a big storm came through, a tornado. It's not going to be on the daily, because we do take care of the daily tasks and have enough equipment to do that for our cities. So,
What are some of the daily tasks?
oh. Yeah. Well, it depends on the department.
Yeah.
You know, police response is daily, patrolling the city, making sure that you're prepared for just about anything that could happen. Fire, same thing. They're going on medicals. They're taking care of fire calls. Public Works is plowing and making sure that your running water is coming to your house and the sewer is going away from your house, and they take care of our streets, our parks. I mean, they have a really huge role in our daily lives that I don't think a lot of people understand how much Public Works has their fingers in making you feel like this is a great place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most fascinating things that, you know, on this show we like to talk a lot about those types of things, because that's the whole purpose of why we're here, really, for viewers at home, for the residents of Osseo to not only get to know how their city works, you know, who's making decisions, how the decisions are made, but also how they, as residents, and constituents how they can get involved. And in fact, for Osseo, you mentioned that there were committees, but those are the committees that are like only within city council members. Does the city of Osseo have like committees that members from the community can participate in?
Absolutely. And in fact, if anybody wants to be a committee member, please just give me a call or send me an email, send our city clerk, Natalie Santillo, an email. We're constantly looking for more resident people to come in and participate. So we do have a planning commission, we have a park and recs committee, we have a public safety committee, we have an EDA, an economic development authority,
yeah.
yep, and then we have, oh boy, this next council meeting, we're actually appointing some people to these committees and commissions.
Excellent.
So we're part of a watershed district, so we am also part of CCX here, you know,
Yes.
as a representative. I mean, all of that is, yeah, and we would love to have more and more people with our residents that would come in and participate, because they get to see the behind the scenes that
Right.
goes on and really have some impact on what we're doing.
Absolutely. No better way to get involved with your city and its development, making a difference, you know, making changes and being part of the future of your city.
Absolutely.
So thanks for encouraging people to apply. Now, you mentioned CCX, so now that you've done that, that's another hat that you wear, right? You are, I believe, a board member of the
Yes.
Northwest Suburbs Cable Communication Commission,
Yes.
and that is a commission made up of 9 cities, right? So Osseo is one of 9, includes Maple Grove, Golden Valley, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Plymouth, Crystal, Robbinsdale, New Hope, and Osseo. And it's been almost 40 years that this commission has been in place. And it provides opportunity for us here in the studio and to do shows like this and to have people like you come on the show and talk to residents of your city. And so thank you for your support of that. You know, I think we're in an interesting time where community access television has started to dwindle, and the funding for it has started to, you know, sort of disappear. Most of people don't even know that if you look on your bill, there, you know, and you have your cable bill for Xfinity, there's a PEG fee on there that stands for Public Education and Government Programming. It's maybe $1 and change every month. That goes into funding the operation of CCX, you know, media, and that, you know, here in Studio A, all of us that produce this show in our control room, myself, we're all just volunteers, and we're doing this because we enjoy it and we want to get the word out to the community. So we encourage people to come down here. But when you go back and you start talking with your partners at the state, I'm going to ask you to please ask them to find ways to keep community access television going and to, you know, find support for it, because without it, information like this just isn't going to get out into the air.
That's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we have still some time left, and I guess, you know, what would you like people tuning in today to most remember about their time together with you and I? What would you like to leave them with in your sort of closing thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, everyone that has become part of the Osseo family, I call it. So whether you're at a council meeting, or you participate in some sort of a commission, or you're on the city council and get elected, or you're even just one of our employees that are working every day, there's a true love of that community and wanting it to be better, whatever that looks like. I mean, we all have different views on that, which is great. I think our community has really bonded over some of the events that we actually hold. So this is our 150th year. It's our 150th celebration this year. We'll be at our, the Lions do it. It's called Lions Roar. So that's the weekend after, I get them mixed up. Is it the last one in August is Labor Day, September.
Yeah,
Labor Day. So it's the weekend after Labor Day. And it's Lions Roar, and we're going to have a huge gathering of people and just to celebrate the 150th. So we have a 150th committee, which is working to put together a book, and they're selling buttons, and they're selling shirts and things. So they're really out there trying to celebrate our 150 years in existence, you know,
That's
for government.
incredible.
Absolutely. And it's been really fun to listen to some of the stories and see some of the background on where our city came from. I mean, you were giving me some information earlier, so it's really interesting. And I think, you know, as small as Osseo is, it has a big impact on the area, and we have some really cool things going on. We just celebrated in December. We have a mini dazzle, which Santa comes to town. We have a street fire, so you can actually go out and stand in the street, and there's a bonfire going on. Santa sits in our main park and talks to the kids, and they can take pictures. And then we give away hot dogs and hot chocolate, and we do all of that. And people, the community area, and it's not just Osseo, it's, you know, the surroundings, you know, come into town and really talk about how great that is. Lions Roar is a Friday, Saturday celebration. They have live music. We have a parade on Saturday afternoon, or right at noon bell. You know, and we have some nostalgia in town. So we have a noon and 6 p.m. bell that comes off on a siren that comes off on our water tower, and that is in remembrance of the lunch and dinner bell for the farmers in the community from years ago. So it still goes off every day.
Wow.
At noon and at 6 p.m. So, and we have that traditional small town downtown.
Yeah.
That is really, you know, we do lights in the during Christmas time, and during the year or during the summer we have flower baskets hanging from the light poles, and it's really a traditional downtown area. You can drive down Central Avenue and it's full of businesses and people, and it's vibrant. I mean, right now it's a vibrant city to be a part of, and I want people to understand that even though we are small, our staff is phenomenal. We are here to listen. We're here as far as your government to protect and serve and to take care of our residents and I want Osseo to be a safe, well-run place when I go to retire.
Well, it's fascinating that you mentioned that, you know, that it's turning 150 years old, and if you really think about it, for about 12.5 to 13% of that time, you have influenced and guided its direction, most recently in the last 2 decades, in one form or another. And so from where I sit, it very much is the place that you've described. And you've done a tremendous job. I know it's not just one person,
No, it's not.
but the residents of Osseo are very fortunate to have you in the roles that you're in, and I wish you nothing but the best and success, and we'd love to have you back. And if you decide not to retire, you know, it would be interesting to see what role you would play in the, you know, continuation of the Osseo story.
I really appreciate you having me, and I had a great time, so thank you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you back again sometime.
Absolutely.
Well, that concludes our episode for tonight, and as always, we'll be back with more interesting stories from other cities in our viewership. Please be sure to tune in, and until then, be well and have a wonderful day.